Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today we will be looking at my final rankings for the tight ends and for the running back position. Now, the tight ends, there's not a whole lot here, not a whole lot of changes. There are some changes, and I will go over the risers and fallers. That's, I think, the more important part of this video, but I'm not going through my complete rankings. For instance, for the tight ends here, we're just going to go through my top 11 quickly because my next tier goes all the way down to tight end 25, and so that's a big tier. We want to keep this succinct, but you can go up onto my website. There is a link down in the description. I think there's a link right below me, www.theffforge.com, to get the full, complete, and updated rankings in case there are any updates prior to your draft at whatever point over this coming weekend. By the way, good luck with your drafts. And one last thing, if you want my draft board, you can also get that up at the website. On the front page, there is an obvious area to download it or print it off. Same with on the rankings page where you can find all my positional rankings. There's a button to click on the top of that page. So let's just hop right on to the tight ends. My first tier is going to be Travis Kelce. Obviously, you can't dispute it. And then Mark Andrews in at tier 2, all on his lonesome. There's some injury concerns with Mark Andrews, so keep that in mind if you're drafting him. I drafted him, and I would like to feel more confident that he's going to be coming into the season at 100% health, especially after what I went through last season with him down the stretch. Then we have Kyle Pitts and TJ Hawkinson in at my third tier, and an obvious two guys are missing from this tier, I would say, but I just have some concerns with these guys, whereas these two are kind of the exact opposite. As far as Kyle Pitts goes, he is outside of the top two tight ends, the only guy who I think has the actual talent and opportunity to be the tight end number 1 on the season in all of fantasy football. And so that gets him up into this tier. And then TJ Hawkinson is kind of the exact, he is the guaranteed, I guess, top 6 guy, but I want to say almost top 4. Week in and week out, he should have a good amount of targets like he did last season. And that's good. That's awesome. You can rely on him. You can't rely on many tight ends. And that's where my concern comes in for the first 2 tight ends of my 4th tier here, Dallas Goedert and George Kittle. Jeez. And then we have Pat Freiermuth in at tight end number 7, Darren Waller in at 8, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, and Dalton Schultz. All guys who I think have the best chance to be top 10, top 12 tight end ones. We'll just put it like that. Whereas after that, things get a little bit murky. So let's look at my recent risers and fallers for the tight end position. Risers going to be TJ Hawkinson moving up to tight end. I have 3 listed here, but no. Tight end 4. He was previously probably 6 maybe or 5, so not a huge jump up. Then Darren Waller moved up 2 spots from tight end all the way up to tight end number 8. Previously, I believe, had him at tight end 10, not too long ago, but I have jumped him up a couple of times very recently. Then Luke Musgrave and Sam Laporta I have up at my tight ends 16 and 17. This has a little bit to do just with I've waffled back and forth with my rankings once we get down to about tight end 15 all the way down to tight end 24 or so, and it depends exactly what you're looking for. But there is evidence to say that at the end of the day, at the tight end position, I've done the research on this, I have the data to back it up. If you take one tight end who is consistently getting you those 5 to 7.5 point fantasy point games, which the 7.5 is not terrible for a tight end on a weekly basis, they're less helpful to your overall team compared to that tight end whose spread is more 3 to 12 on the average week or something like that. The guy who gives you some more boom in the tight end room is going to be the more valuable option. And so that's where, for a couple of fallers like Tyler Conklin and Gerald Everett for me, I've ended up putting Luke Musgrave, Sam Laporta over them, because although I think there's a decent opportunity for both of those two, and at least Gerald Everett just had a really good season, I don't see that really repeating. I just see them as more of solid floor guys who have some upside if they can get a touchdown. and being touchdown reliant isn't exactly what I want either. Whereas Luke Musgrave, Sam Laporta, I think could be key pieces to these offenses, especially as the year goes on, since they are just rookie tight ends, and that's the risk. They're rookie tight ends. But I think they each have a pretty solid opportunity to be some decent fantasy contributors. Then for the fallers, they just went over Tyler Conklin, Gerald Everett, and Greg Dulcich has been the big faller for me over the last month with the preseason working out how it has, him being the tight end 2 there. Bad news coming out of camp for the most part this offseason surrounding Greg Dulcich and how well he's adapted to the new offense. It's just concerning. So I had him very high, so he moved back. He was top 10 tight end for me. He was my secret weapon, no longer is. And then George Kittle moving down to tight end number 5, and the big thing, moving him down a tier. And that just came down to the concerns. I've been waffling back and forth with him too all off season. This is where I landed. He was very, very efficient last season, and when all the weapons are healthy there, he's more of a contributing piece, I find, and then it becomes extremely touchdown dependent. And that's a risk that I think I'm willing to take some upside on some other guys. But him and Dallas Goedert, it's basically a tie right there. It really is. I have concerns about Dallas Goedert too. Let's move on to the running backs, because there is a big list of risers and fallers for the running back position. There have been a lot of changes, not all massive, big changes, not all Greg Dulcich-sized changes in their rankings, but a lot of guys moving around over the past month. So I will get the running backs up here. So here are my current running back tiers as they are. I would go with the 5th tier, except that goes all the way down to my running back 38. It is a massive tier. So just going to leave that out of the video for quickness purposes, but you can once again go up onto the website and see my complete rankings for the running back position and all other positions, as well as them being updated if there are any changes prior to whatever day that you are drafting this weekend. So in tier 1, all on his lonesome, is going to be Christian McCaffrey, followed by in tier 2, Saquon Barkley and Austin Eckler. Once upon a time, had them up on a tier of their own, have ended up changing that. So then Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Ramondre Stevenson. I can sneak peek Bijan Robinson is a riser. Ended up, as far as him moving ahead of Derrick Henry, just made that change, I believe, yesterday. And it comes down to the receiving upside for Bijan Robinson compared to Derrick Henry for half PPR purposes, and of course for full PPR purposes. So in standard scoring format, I would go Derrick Henry. And then in my next tier, did we get to Ramondre at the end of that tier? We have Joe Mixon to lead that off at my running back 10. Jahmyr Gibbs is 11. Aaron Jones, Alexander Mattison, Najee Harris, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and Travis Etienne Jr., I believe, sneaking his way up into a new tier. Then we have J.K. Dobbins leading off my final tier for this video, followed by Miles Sanders, Damian Pierce, Rachaad White, James Conner, and James Cook. As far as James Conner goes, just a little bit here, not a big faller for me with the recent news for the quarterback situation in Arizona, because I think the same thing, like they're going to rely on that rushing attack a lot. They also got rid of a veteran running back with their cuts that I thought was going to receive some work because they would use the running back room so heavily. But that equaled out with the new situation at quarterback, which takes away a little bit of the receiving upside for James Conner, potentially. But maybe that makes that greater, I don't know. Either way, I did move him back behind Rachaad White, mostly because I'm a little less confident in things surrounding James Conner, but I also think that just like Damian Pierce last season, like I almost don't care how bad the offense is because he's just going to get so much opportunity, should at least, over the course of the season, and opportunity is king. And then James Cook to wrap up that tier. Let's move on to the risers and fallers because that's a big list. It's going to cover some of these guys. So risers over the past month or so-ish. Going to start off with Saquon Barkley over Eckler. Had him like that at one point. Changed it. We're back to it. I have some concerns about Austin Eckler with that new offense and usage, and along with Joshua Kelly's another riser just because he's performed really well, and I think that he might have a role in this offense a little bit with the ones. And those things I just think are going to take the cap off of Austin Eckler, who also, I think, due to injuries last season with the wide receiver core, got more work than I'm expecting him to get this year. And so I just don't expect him to be a top 2 running back this season. But obviously still a great talent, and should still have plenty of opportunity. Nick Chubb in at running back 4 over Josh Jacobs. Had moved Nick Chubb ahead of Josh Jacobs just due to the concerns about Josh Jacobs and the holdout situation. After that got resolved, though, and Josh Jacobs is not going down the road of a Jonathan Taylor, I still kept it this way because I just thought they're basically at a tie, so at that point it's who's going to get more touchdowns, and I like this Cleveland offense just a little bit more than that Las Vegas offense, so tie goes to Nick Chubb there. Then Bijan Robinson was my next riser. He's gone up 2 spots over time, and I explained where I ended up moving him up ahead of Derrick Henry, and Ramondre Stevenson just kind of falling with the addition of Ezekiel Elliott there. Yeah, he is one of my fallers too. For Ramondre, once was a top 4 guy for me. Then we have Joe Mixon in that running back 10, Aaron Jones, another riser. We're back to risers. And Alexander Mattison both jumped Najee Harris with just the concerns that maybe he's not going to quite be the bell cow as much as we were expecting, or as much as I was expecting coming into the offseason. So they are now my running backs 12 and 13. That is Aaron Jones and Alexander Mattison, respectively. Alexander Mattison actually jumped quite a bit up. He jumped up all the way from running back 18, whereas most of these movements are about 2 or 3 spots for these guys. And that's going to include Travis Etienne, who actually didn't move up in my rankings over time, but he did move up a tier for me, like I mentioned when we put him up there. Then Dameon Pierce, James Cook, Javonte Williams. I think Javonte Williams is very obvious why he has risen with the good news for his injury. Alvin Kamara didn't receive the max suspension or anything, so he moved up in my rankings a little bit. Dalvin Cook moved up in my rankings, finding a new home over the past month. Kenneth Gainwell, the outlook for him is much different than it was a month ago, thinking that he might be the lead back of a very good offense. You have to like that, and that's the same reason why Raheem Mostert has also risen up in my rankings. And now Zach Moss might be the lead back in Indianapolis. It could be Deion Jackson, but whichever one you think is going to be, move them up your draft boards because they're probably not very high on them, and they should be. And, that could be an efficient running back spot, too, with the threat of Anthony Richardson running. Could help to open up some lanes for those guys, even though they don't have anywhere near the same talent as JT. Still might be some solid options. We don't know that JT will be back after 4 weeks, so they're definitely draft worthy. On to Roschon Johnson, guy who's risen up, very good positive feedback late in camp, and has, I think, pretty clearly become the RB2 there over a guy who was on my follower list, Deonta Foreman. Then Tank Bigsby, Tyjae Spears, and Jaylen Warren all kind of moved up together in unison as they've all looked good in the preseason. Ezekiel Elliott is my running back 52, but still that he's moved up in my rankings regardless with his, going from being a free agent to finding a spot in New England. Joshua Kelly, I talked about that one a little bit. Deuce Vaughn has been everything that we hoped and dreamed of for him, and so he's realized the fact that, he's a pretty darn good little football player. And I don't know that he's carved out a role in that offense, but somebody to keep an eye on. And in case of injury, I think he'll definitely end up getting a decent amount of work in that instance. Then Justice Hill moved up my rankings a little bit just with the idea, which I believe came from the local commentators for the Baltimore Ravens, that Justice Hill, in the event of an injury to J.K. Dobbins, might be the guy who would really get that lead back role and, continue to split some work with Gus Edwards, just as I think J.K. Dobbins will. Then Rico Dowdle moved up the rankings with Malik Davis getting cut, not being the RB2 there. It is Rico Dowdle. Once again, it's a good offense that I want to own. I want to own the backup running backs on good offenses if they have a pretty clear shot to that role in the event of an injury, and Rico Dowdle does. Michael Carter, in the event of an injury to Dalvin Cook, could definitely produce. I think he would be the backup to Dalvin Cook's role in that offense. If Dalvin Cook goes down, and Izzy Abanikanda would be the backup in the event that Breece Hall goes down. And then Chris Rodriguez Jr. has looked really good all preseason. And to be frank, Brian Robinson wasn't ultra impressive last season, so I don't think that his job's 100% secure if Chris Rodriguez were to continue on the path that he has been on. I don't know how good of a blocker he is in the passing game, how much they can trust him with those other things. But as far as his running goes, he's been very impressive in the preseason. And so would I be shocked to come week 6 and he is the starter going forward? No, I would not. So a guy to keep an eye on. And then for the fallers, we have Ramondre Stevenson in at running back 9. Talked about that. Breece Hall, obviously, with the addition of Dalvin Cook, throws a little bit of a wrench into that whole thing. And so we were drafting him quite high previously, and that just brought his stock back to reality. Anyways, with the injury concerns, it's probably better for whoever ends up getting Breece Hall that they didn't have to spend top 12 kind of capital on him. Then Jonathan Taylor obviously falls down in the rankings with not going to be playing for the first 4 weeks, and after that, we still don't know. He moved down quite a bit. Let me actually let you know where I have him ranked. It is running back 26. I have him behind David Montgomery and ahead of DeAndre Swift right now, ahead of Alvin Kamara too by 2 spots. So right in there, I still think if he comes back and he's healthy and he plays week 5, from that point on, he could be very, very valuable. So I don't want to wait too long to say not draft him, to rank him too low. Then DeAndre Swift has gone from my running back 22 down to my running back 27. I was high on him, so I think that's more like he's at ADP now, but he was a faller for me. Then Rashad Penny has fallen about 10 spots in the rankings. He was a riser. Now he is back to being a faller with Kenneth Gainwell being the one that we are expecting to be the lead back there. Then Jamal Williams has been a faller, and that's been more so a case of other guys just rising a little bit. That's Tank Bigsby, Tyjae Spears, Jaylen Warren, some of those guys. I don't know that all of them are ranked ahead of Jamal Williams, just giving an example. Then Devin Singletary has been a faller as of very recent in the offseason. This is part of why I moved up Damian Pierce a spot in my rankings. I'm less confident that Devin Singletary will have as big of a role in this offense as I thought he would, because he just hasn't been utilized like that in this preseason. I still think it's possible because you wouldn't have seen a whole lot of him, I guess, in the preseason in the situations that they were in, given what I expect his role to be. So I'm a little shaky on that, but I moved him down a little ways. Deonta Foreman moved down. Cordero Patterson moved down in my rankings. He's somebody who he projects decently because on a week in and week out basis, I think he does have a floor. I just don't think that floor is really high enough to help you win fantasy football games. And so there are guys who I would rather take a risk on compared to taking this guy where, he's predictable, but it's not enough to help you out. And Chase Brown has been a faller, as I thought, once we got clarity that Joe Mixon would remain with the team, that Chase Brown would win the running back 2 spot. He's not even going to be the running back 2. So he fell quite a ways in my rankings, very far. And that is it for the running backs and the tight ends for my most recent up-to-date rankings for you for your big draft weekend. Good luck in your drafts. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you made it this far. Peace out.